bring in our guests to just share their perspective then on what we heard there. Dr. Simon Howell is a senior researcher at the Center for Criminology at UCT. Simon, thanks for being with us. Really do appreciate your time. I think it's important to start with yourself as a researcher, somebody who's watching the space and the numbers. What for you are some of the most important things that we heard shared there today?
Well, I think on the one hand, it's clear that a lot of effort and time and work has been put into policing over the last quarter. There have been a number of high-density operations that they've conducted, and as the minister and others mentioned, there have been a lot of arrests. The statistics themselves, they present pretty much the same picture as has previously been presented. There are slight decreases in murder and the like, but overall, considering the context and considering the high number of these crimes in the first place, that's pretty much more of the same. What is concerning for me, of course, is how arrests are translated into actual convictions, which remain incredibly low. So, it's one thing to arrest many people. It's another to actually find evidence and convict them of crimes. They mentioned GBV arrests at about 5,780 or something, and the conviction rate was about 12%, which is quite low. So, it's one thing to continue arresting people. It's another to actually work with the criminal justice system so as that convictions and results are secured.
Well, let's talk about that last point that you are raising there. They've now launched a 90-day GBV plus F blitz, and they've also revived the Inter-Ministerial Committee on GBV in South Africa. In your professional view then, what are the most critical gaps in GBV responses, whether in policing, prosecution, victim support or prevention?
Well, I think the most important thing and the key thing that has undermined GBV responses thus far has been trust in the police itself. It's that people just don't trust the police and are scared to go to the police. And ultimately, considering the type of crime of this nature, it is a crime where you need to establish significant and trustful relationships with communities and with the public, so as that there's a chain there which people can draw on in order to seek help. On the other hand, there is a need for an integrated approach which requires that the police work with the rest of the criminal justice system so as that dockets are expedited and that, the processes are followed in a manner that ensures that when a conviction is possible, it does occur. So it's mostly, on the one hand, it's a public-facing concern in which they need to work at developing trustful relationships. But on the other hand, it's very much a procedural concern in the sense that they need to develop the relationships they have with other criminal justice entities so as that the processes can be undertaken smoothly and consistently and ensure that convictions, if they are to occur, can occur.
With Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, Simon, contributing nearly 40% of those rape cases nationally, what unique regional dynamics or policing challenges do you think are contributing to these hotspots, and how do you then retrofit strategies to be more tailored to the challenges in these specific areas?
Well, on the one hand, they're both large urban areas or have large urban areas in them, which presents a unique set of challenges in the South African context. There's also high levels of migration or semi-migration to these areas. So you have a lot of new people and a lot of movement of people, which creates challenges in and of itself, of course. But there's also systemic challenges around structures and the spatial layout of cities and the like. So those are on the one hand, the sort of structural challenges. On the other, it remains a concern around how the police are employed and how they undertake operations, so as that they target the places they need to the most. And, with GBV and the like, it remains a difficult undertaking because the levels of trust are so low between the public and the police. So, that ultimately undermines the entire relationship that may or may not exist between them. And beyond that, I think there remains a concern around how the police perform their activity and how they engage with the public in a manner that ultimately builds trust. And, in many areas, there is simply no relationship between the police and the community as such. And that ultimately stunts both the ability for the police to detect crime, but also for the police to engage with and react to crime. It's paramount importance that the police focus on and begin developing those relationships. We've said this for a while now, but it's something that has come to the head clearly and that needs to occur.
You know, I was chatting to Professor Dumisani Mabunda earlier this morning, Simon, and I didn't have time to ask him about that trust question, but you brought it up for the second time now, or the third time, and I think it is an important aspect that policing isn't about, parachuting things into communities. It is about building those relationships with the local CPFs and the activist organizations and those sorts. So how do you think, in terms of what can help police with the work that they do and build that trust? How do you think AI and smart policing can help as a tool to continue or to build and support and trust in police in local communities?
Well, I think, the use of technology and AI has its place and has its purpose, but on the one hand, they may facilitate policing and it may increase the levels of intelligence that can be gathered and the like. But policing and trust is ultimately something that needs to occur between people and on the streets. And really the only way that has been shown to build trust between police and communities is for police to get onto the streets and to run their beats and to essentially engage with the community on a day-to-day basis, person to person. So, the technological aspects of AI and the like may help and may facilitate more effective policing at a technical level and may encourage the collection of intelligence and the like. But policing is ultimately about people working together with other people to ensure safety of communities. And that's the level that I think it needs to engage with. And thus far, at least, that level has not really been activated. It's very much a discussion at Imbizos, or it's a discussion at inquiries, but it's never really a discussion that occurs on the streets between the police as they undertake their duties and community members as they live their lives.
Let's lean into the concept of collaboration then, Simon, and talk about the high levels of unemployment, poverty and inequality, which we are made to understand are the causation reasons or the causal reasons fueling crime. What role then can social development, education and community-based interventions play alongside policing reforms to really build and make a reality a comprehensive, effective national crime reduction strategy?
Sure. I think, in this country, we've for too long relied on the police to deal with social issues. And unfortunately, we can't arrest our way out of social issues. And, thus far, at least, I think there's been little conversation between communities and how other government departments need to come to the table and in facilitating and building up communities. We often blame, if there is crime and if there's disorder within a community, we look towards the police to sort it out. But in fact, in dealing with underlying causes, it's primarily other government departments' issue and concern and should be their target. The police have a role to play, of course, and that is an important role, but it's not one that should be at the forefront of every single response to poverty and marginalization that occurs in this country. And unfortunately, it seems to often be that way. A more consistent and more holistic approach would include and be driven by social development, education, health, and many others. And, the police would, again, have a small role to play, but they shouldn't be at the forefront of these initiatives. And that's often the case. And I think that's where, the police often have a problem in the sense that they end up responding to issues which they're not meant to deal with. And the result of which is that the issues are not responded to effectively. And, it ends up tarring the police with a bad name, when in fact it's simply that the real reason is that other government departments weren't there and never responded in the first place.